The world is extremely far from what it appears to be, in my belief. And in this video, I want to explain why. There are many things that I find to be nonsensical. There are many things in neurology and in psychology and philosophy and many different fields of science, in particular quantum mechanics, that I think are all aligned, that can all come together to give us a deeper understanding of existence, to give us a more horrific understanding of existence. And it's like space, this is the best way for me to put it. When it comes to this belief of mine, it's like space is beautiful. It's an incredible place to look up and to see everything, but at the same time, it's horrifying to know. It's deeply horrifying and moving to know how small we are, how insignificant we are, and just how far we have to go, just how uncomprehendibly far we would have to go, the quintillions of years of travel just to go a little further, to go to a couple galaxies, just understand a little more about this universe and perhaps our place in it. The uncomprehendable, you know, size and complexity of the universe is beautiful but yet horrifying, and that's sort of how it is with Arthur Schopenhauer's philosophy, and well, one in particular named "The World as Will and Representation." I believe it's what it's called, if I'm correct. And basically, this revolves around everything in the world being caused by will. Everything that we perceive being a perception that's false. Everything being caused by will, by action. I believe that's kind of the premise of the philosophy. It's that everything exists because of an action, because of this will for things to happen, for things to exist, but that will itself creates a false perception of reality, a false perception that there are things, physical things that exist, liquids, solids, gases, plasmas, all that, and that it's all something like a 14-dimensional existence, and things exist within other dimensions, and they're all caused by will. And it's sort of like, it's an extremely hard thing to explain, but it's basically like our perception of stars in space, our perception of light. We can see on the visible spectrum, but imagine if we could see things on the infrared spectrum, on the microwave, on the radio wave, on the ultraviolet, the X-ray, gamma ray spectrum. If we could see things on such a spectrum, things would appear, I'm sure, massively, drastically different than the way they do now. And we can see many things using X-ray and infrared. We can see how those things look using light. But in order to see those things from those different spectrums, it requires visible light anyway. We can't see those things from another spectrum unless it involves visible light anyway, if that makes sense. And so that's sort of how I perceive reality. And it's like we can see things around us, but we can't see within the world we exist in. We can't see the molecules or the atoms or the subatomic particles that make up everything. We can't see beyond our spectrum, our field of view. We can't see beyond it. It's sort of like bacteria trying to scope out, a mountain, on Earth. To a bacteria, it would just look like a black void, or some sort of blur. It doesn't have the eyes. It doesn't have the ability to perceive a larger, grander scale of existence, if that makes sense. And I think that's how it is with our neurons, with our brain. You know, we have more neurons and we have perhaps more complex neurons, so we can experience consciousness because of that, in my opinion, and we have higher intelligence to understand things because of the neurons. But nonetheless, I think that it's all a false perception. You know, like when we touch materials, you know, we it's not that we're actually touching them. It's actually more so like the electrical energy between atoms is sort of interfering. You know, the electrons are interacting when we touch different objects around us, and that electricity gets sent through our nerves to our neurons, and we can feel it, you know. But it's not like we're actually touching other elements. And I can't imagine what it would feel like to actually touch another atom, you know, to get around the electron shell, and you know, I don't know. It sounds weird, but I don't think that our physical perception is real. I don't think that our visual perception of reality is real. In fact, I think that um, um, Arthur, I keep forgetting his name, but I think that Arthur Schopenhauer's you know, perspective on reality is extremely accurate. And I've been studying chemistry quite a bit because I've recently learned about you know, many different things in chemistry, and I feel that it's important because it can help us to uncover the truth about existence. I don't think we'll ever really be able to perceive reality for what it actually is. You know, we can't shrink down to the subatomic scale and see things, you know, that are within other things. We can't exist in that state. I think there are certain things that we can't achieve, certain things that we won't be able to experience, but I think that we can develop a understanding. I think that we can come to learn the truth about existence with our technology and our information and higher intelligence through super artificial intelligence and ultra artificial intelligence. And I think that's the only way to truly begin to develop an understanding of our existence. And so to get right to oxygen and our false visual perception, oxygen degrades, it deteriorates and it degrades everything. And I believe that you know, for complex reasons that has something to do with valence electrons, the you know, electron shell of oxygen. I can't remember what, but something to do with oxygen. You know, something to do with the subatomic particles and oxygen atoms causes extreme deterioration of the elements around it and molecules around it. It's like when oxygen interacts with iron, it makes iron turn into iron oxide. It rusts iron. And we can also see this effect with other elements, with everything. Basically, any liquid, any solid, and maybe even one or two other gases, oxygen might deteriorate, might oxidize in some sort of way. But most gases are sort of inert. But oxygen is extremely extremely damaging to other things, and it makes me think, even though we've evolved to handle oxygen, even though we've evolved to need oxygen to survive, it makes me wonder what the effects oxygen has on our brains when oxygen atoms bond with other elements and they degrade other elements over time. You know, all that you know, electrical interaction, the heat and the energy created. It makes me wonder: is there perhaps some false perception of reality that we're receiving because of the effects of oxygen and the effects of I don't know, nitrogen um, and other degrading elements. Sulfur, I think, is one. There are many elements that are very degrading. Even like chlorine, I think, is another. There are many degrading elements, and many of those our body needs in small and large quantities in order to exist, in order to survive. And it makes me think perhaps these different elements have some sort of damaging effect on our perception of reality. Our neurons, require oxygen, and I think that because of the energy created through oxygen's degradation of other elements, it creates small amounts of energy that sort of interfere with our perception of existence. Perhaps it even allows for consciousness. I don't know, because I mean, at bare minimum, what I know for certain is that consciousness requires energy. It requires at least energy. I don't know much about the microtubules and the different types of neurons and the plasticity and the chemical liquids and all the different things required for consciousness, but I know it at least requires energy. And so I think that oxygen has an effect on our consciousness, on our perception of reality. And I know for a fact gravity does. Gravity has an effect on our perception of reality for certain. And I guess you could say that there is no up or down. Up and down doesn't it isn't really what we think it is, because in space there's no gravity, and so because there's no gravity, up and down, uh, we can't tell which way is up and which way is down. But when you're on Earth, let's say if you're on the South Pole, technically it would be almost like as if you're upside down, but you can't tell whether you're up or down, because gravity, it distorts our perception of location in a way, if that makes sense. Even though there is no upright or downright in existence, it's all just up is up and down is up and up is down. It's all just kind of the same, if that makes sense. But I think that all the different forces in existence have differing effects on our perception. And for instance, like speed, like energy, when gravity and speed come together, time dilates in a way, and it makes things slow down around the center of extreme gravitational masses. And I think that I think in certain places and in certain events, things can become more diluted, more obscured, based off of the gravity or the energy or the elements in different places. I think that all these different things can change um, the way that reality is perceived, at least by living beings. I think that it takes technology. It takes some sort of non-organic organism to truly perceive reality. I think that that requires extremely complex technology, extremely complex advancements. But I think that technology can be used to perceive reality for what it truly is, because I don't think that we can with our biological chemical makeup. I think that interferes with our ability to truly perceive the world for what it really is. Um,
Yeah,
but anyway, I would suggest looking into Arthur Schopenhauer. Um, his one of his works in particular, the world. What was it? The world as represented. I forget what it was called. Um, the world as will and yes, Die Welt als Will und Vorstellung. Right, the world as will and representation is my favorite of his philosophies, and it's a sort of pessimistic, nihilistic, dark philosophy, but it's it's one of my favorites of all time, and I'm gonna keep looking. I'm gonna keep studying. Psychology, neurology, and biology, and different sciences, because I do think that with more knowledge we can come to truly understand just how deceived we are by our false perception of reality. And so, anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think about what I've said in the comment section down below, and watch my other videos. I make all sorts of great in-depth philosophical content, so check all that out.